I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Wow.
New countdown.
Jackson in the house.
Yeah, Jackson from Birmingham.
Yeah. He is here full time for the summer. Less 1 week to Hawaii.
Oh, man.
Hawaii.
Did y'all go to Hawaii when y'all were in college?
No. I'd like to.
Well, maybe he'll let you go with him.
All right, Jackson from Birmingham, thank you for getting us started here.
Yeah.
Guys, welcome to West Point, Mississippi. We're all tired. It's been an arduous couple of weeks. Turkey season's winding down. We've had a new system installed in our computer, and it had some issues that we've been dealing with, and it's been a lot of challenges.
That was a nice way to put it, Bob.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to just go ahead and say it. I finally killed the turkey I've been trying to kill. And that feels so
Joe
much
Cruel.
better. Yeah.
We talked about him last week, you know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I had to say, you put your time in. I've hunted with him, with you. I've hunted him with you once. Was it just once?
Twice, I think.
Twice.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
8 times.
8 times.
And Toxie told me last night, he said, Mr. Fox used to say that 7-1 is a pretty good record if you're an SEC football coach, but it ain't worth if you're a turkey.
Yeah, that's right. Well, congratulations. You hung with that one. And we got a couple more, too, if you want to talk about that now.
Yeah, who else?
Eddie Stubbs.
I saw that.
What an amazing hunt.
Well, it was a great little video, and it looked like she ran forever to get to the turkey. It had to be a long shot.
Vandy said it was pretty close, but she just waffled him. No question about it. So congratulations to her.
Yeah, can't wait to hear the story.
How old is she?
I think she's going to be, how old is she, 7?
I think she's like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Cute little girl, and so she was so excited to kill
Yeah, and
that
she's
turkey.
really into it.
Yeah,
Hugging everybody.
Yeah.
She's going to be a killer.
It's going to be great. Yeah.
They better go ahead and dig a moat now. She's
with the same
boys.
gun Mr. Fox shot. So
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
How about
that's
that?
super
And
cool.
it didn't go click this time.
No, Vandy actually loaded it correctly.
He
this
loaded
time.
it better for his daughter.
How about that? All right.
That's
Well,
awesome.
Who else we got?
Mac, straight in from the Black Hills of South Dakota.
I heard he
put some
killed
Southern
something,
skills on there. I think he killed this. Mac's really good at creating conversation, both with turkeys and with people. So I think he used those skills to for him and his buddy. Is his buddy Jesse?
They secured some private land.
I don't know if
access,
that's what it was or not, but I mean,
I can see that happening.
I can
for sure.
see that happening. That's for sure. So,
So
so congratulations to those guys fresh off for the road.
Speaking of Vandy, circling back around, he missed one the other day.
Oh, I wasn't even going to bring that up.
Oh,
yeah,
I never
we-
heard that.
yeah.
The other day, I think it was yesterday.
It was,
to be
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
to be
well.
sure. Well,
Well, turkey season is about to be in the rearview mirror. It is in
in the
Mississippi.
South, yeah, a lot of guys. Are
Yeah,
getting
I
on
wish
the
I
road.
had a chance to miss one.
Yeah, Dudley. I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Did you not have a chance?
Nope.
Wow.
Doing too much habitat work.
Yep.
All right, guys. So, look, what we're going to talk about today is so important. If you're trying to manage your property, if you're trying to grow a deer herd, manage it, understand. Sometimes you can look at something with your eyes and not know what you're looking at. And when I'm talking about how old a deer is.
Right. And I mean, it's one of the keys we look for in quality deer management, how old of egg structure you have in your herd, and you want to be able to provide those the nutrition they need and get them as old as they can. To have a quality whitetail. So yeah, age is hugely important and a very, to your point, everybody just says, "Oh, he's a 3-year-old,"
Yeah.
but they
Yeah, they
don't really know. I mean, and even the jawbones we've studied, I know it gives you a good kind of barometer or line of comparison, but environmental conditions are different, and what they eat, and if there's more grit, there's a bunch of different factors in there. So, really knowing is a tough thing.
And my understanding, and our guests could definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say jawbones are only precise or accurate, whatever you want to call it, to about 5 years of age, or once they get mature.
Yeah.
It's harder to tell by looking at the teeth.
Let me get them
yeah.
introduced. So I'm looking up here at the screen, and look, these people have, Lanny, they're in Manhattan.
What?
Man, the Manhattan.
I didn't know
the
that.
big part of they're in Manhattan, Montana.
Thank goodness for the internet. Oh, okay. I got you. I wondered about that.
Arthur Stevens and Carolyn Nistler. They're in Montana. They're with the Matson Laboratory.
Matson Laboratory.
Yeah, you like what I did?
I like that. Yeah.
But the Matson Laboratory, you guys, they special. Look at on the wall behind them.
I know,
Walrus.
that's an impressive walrus.
They special. So you can send a tooth to them, and they do something with it, and they can tell you exactly how old, whatever
critter it happens to be.
I think so. I'm anxious to learn. Arthur, Caroline, thank y'all for being here.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Can y'all start and tell us a little bit about the Matson Laboratory?
Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, so lab was started back in 1969 by Gary Matson. He started the lab in Milltown, Montana, which is just south of Missoula. And it was there for about 40 or 45 years. And then Carolyn took it over in 2014. And then in 2015, she and her husband built the new lab here in Manhattan. And then that's when I joined back in 2015. And so we've been here in Manhattan for just over, it'll be 10 years here in about 2 months, or I think in June was kind of a 1 month transition that we moved over here. But yeah, the lab started out when Gary started it. He was making all kinds of microscope slide preparations, and just I think one of the targets he was doing was like just standard slides for instruction use in schools, and that wasn't quite cutting it. And there was an individual, I don't know if Carolyn remembers exactly who, but somebody suggested the cementum aging. And so he started cutting teeth, and then he just slowly grew it, over a couple of decades. And then in the mid to late 80s and early 90s is when it really became kind of cemented, not to be punny or anything, but that's when most wildlife agencies began relying pretty heavily on that data. But we've been doing it since 1969. Do you have anything you want to add, Carolyn?
Interesting.
That's it. And it was the Craigheads that Gary Matson was originally working with, and they're pretty popular in the wildlife management realm. So it was really cool that Gary was able to work with them and really pioneer this process, which, as AJ said, almost all state fish and game agencies are relying on for their population management and monitoring demographics. So it's been really cool. It's been a long, storied history. I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I was really interested in this work before I became involved with the lab. So it's been a good fit for all of us. So
what all kind of critters, can y'all age anything by its teeth?
We can age probably anything that has teeth. Yes. Certainly any mammal. We can do reptiles. We've done amphibians. Reptiles depends on the species. Sometimes we use bone instead. And for snakes, we've used rib bones. For alligators, we use femurs. We have aged some birds by their toe bone. And obviously they're lacking teeth, but we're actually working on fish by aging their otoliths, which is a inner ear bone. So I can't say we can age anything, but I'm very confident on mammals, and I'm fairly confident on most other types of vertebrate species.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And, my mind's trying to go to other uses of this technology, but I guess state agencies in trying to understand critters that they're managing would be. Is that y'all's biggest audience or your biggest clientele of state agencies?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, when you say state, we're talking, I guess government agency would be more accurate, because we deal a lot with Canada, and then really a lot of the developed or even some undeveloped European nations are managing their large carnivore populations. They're using our age data. So they're sending their teeth literally across the ocean and across the world, or around the world, to us to have them aged.
That's great. I just remember my first time hearing of you guys was probably in the late 90s when it became a popular option for white-tailed deer. But it seems like y'all were doing it 30 years before that. That's crazy.
I was going to say, Gary kind of really cut his teeth. The big sort of break for the lab was after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And all of a sudden there was a lot of interest in particularly sea mammals and specifically sea otters. And what was happening to the populations after the oil spill, you can imagine it was devastating. And that was the first time that we received thousands of sea otters to analyze. And we kind of built our sea otter model off of that. And then we just sort of branched out from there. And that was in the 80s.
Wow.
So is it like rings on a tree, or you mentioned models? Do y'all have models for specific, wildlife in specific areas that you compare it to, or kind of tell us the basics of how the technology works, if you can?
Yep. You want to do that?
Yeah, so pretty much all the main big game species in North America, those are all covered. And yeah, we do have them. Generally, it's per species, and then some of them just kind of depending on frequency and whether or not we've had the time to take the pictures and put it together. But we do have like population-specific age models. For example, they're deer in Texas, white-tailed deer in Texas are notoriously difficult to age. So we have it's not really a separate model, but it's just ancillary material that we have to review, to look at. And basically, for simplicity sake and for discussing, it is most similar to counting rings on a tree. But what we're referring to when we say models is, when you look at a tree and the cross section there and the rings, it's pretty definitive, where the light and the dark bands are. A lot of species are that way, but then there's quite a few species that have what we call false annuli or components. I did take a picture of the deer that we're going to discuss here later on, and hopefully I'll be able to show you that. But basically what we want to know is what is representing each year of growth. Sometimes it's really easy and crystal clear. Generally, that's going to be in the northern demographic populations, whereas in Texas, it can be a lot more ambiguous, and there's more of a subjective or interpretation nature to it. And so whenever we're unsure, we will assign an age range, so if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably pretty obvious to our listeners why this makes sense for gamekeepers, because we were talking earlier, sometimes we've all been in the skin and shed, and everybody there's so many opinions about how old this deer is, looking at his teeth.
No doubt about it.
And oftentimes, when you want to know exactly, this is how you do it.
Right.
And and I'm thinking that in a gamekeeper's year, it may not be every year, but every few years, there's going to be a deer where I need to know, how old is this deer?
Right.
And these people have the answer.
And there's little things too. Like, we firmly believe that, I do, that our deer, to get to the stage we're really wanting to, what we consider super quality here, they have to be substantially older than they do in other areas. So, it'd be interesting to talk, because we talk about our deer's got to be 7 years old, and then maybe in Iowa, that deer would be
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. That's true, or maybe 2.
And it's really like, Carolyn, when we talk about a 3.5-year-old versus a 5.5-year-old versus a 6, sometimes that can be hard to tell in the heat of the battle.
Oh yeah.
When they're puffed up, it's a cold day. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to misread the information. Yeah. And so there's a deer that I had pictures of, and I've had pictures of him for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So he's at least 4 years old.
At least 4. Mm-hmm. And when I saw him 4 years ago, I thought he was an old man then. Mm-hmm. So, and he has his rack is not very good. And it was actually going downhill.
This is pork chop.
It is. So,
old pork chop.
And so pork chop. A guy down the road of about a mile ended up killing him. And I got lucky, and he communicated to me. So I was able to, I've got all these pictures of this old deer. Mitchell, we can probably show one of these. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, you could go see this.
Yeah.
And then we were able to get the tooth, and then got with Arthur. And so we now know exactly how old that deer was. And it's so, to be able to get that data and know what you're looking, because you really visibly, is he 8 or is he 11 or is he 5.5 and he's just a fat guy? Right. You just don't know. I think what you guys are doing is incredible. And I think everybody needs to just have you in their phone. So when the opportunity arises, they can email you guys or go to your website and get that information. But also, I'd love one of you to explain the process of how because you got to pull a tooth. It's a little more difficult.
Sure.
I'll take it. So yeah, extracting a tooth, we always tell people it's really easy to do on a freshly killed animal, which it is. It literally takes like 30 seconds. You just slice down on each side and pry it forward and it'll come right out. And the teeth that we're talking about this is specific to deer and ungulates, but the lower two incisors, we call them the I1s, and they're right where the jawbone comes together there. It's the tooth on each side of that fissure. And so we extract those. We always say get both of them out because it doesn't really require any extra effort. And then either hang on to one and send us one, or you can send us both. We only process one tooth, but sometimes people nick the tooth with a knife, or very, very rarely a tooth will they're small teeth and sometimes they pop out of a capsule or cassette and we can't find it. So then we'll process a backup, or more commonly, still not super common, but if you have a question on the age and you're like, hey, you guys said this was 2 years old, I'm pretty sure he's 3, we can process that backup for you if you just let us know and let us know why you're thinking that he's older. But yeah, so then basically once we have the tooth, we run it through our process, which involves decalcifying it, and that removes the calcium and basically turns it into the consistency of like a carrot or a rubber eraser. And then we run it through some other chemicals, and ultimately we infiltrate it with paraffin wax, and then we can embed it in wax, and then we'll section it on a microtome, which is a machine that takes real thin sections. There's videos out there, and then we have a couple on our YouTube channel, which are like really, really, I guess, just short and quick. Anyway, and then those slices of tooth get mounted onto a slide, and then they get stained, and we look at them under a microscope, and then that's where the picture. Do you want me to share that picture now? I think this is the same buck you're talking about. I didn't catch the name pork chop one, but this is Heath Bain's deer.
Yeah, that's the deer.
So yeah, I think I know how to share it. So I'm just going to do that real quick.
So how far was pork chop harvested from the Ponderosa?
As the crow flies, about a mile.
About a mile.
Yeah.
It's good that you've got co-op neighbors that you can, y'all are doing some quality deer management together with.
It is. I mean, that's if you got a good neighbor, that's a good thing.
So I'm sure you asked him if you could turkey hunt.
Nah, I hadn't done that. I need to do that.
Back to it, Carolyn.
Mitchell, we got a new guy running the board over here.
Yeah,
Mitchell,
we do. He's doing well.
Mitchell, at some point, will you be able to pull that image up that I sent to you? Yeah. So here is the live image of this deer that we're talking about.
Pork chop.
Now look at him. He's a 200. Y'all tell me. What do you think this deer?
I mean, it has to do with where the picture was taken. So can we give the location of where this picture was taken?
I mean,
so I can
do
have
we
some
know
reference?
the background?
Is this Texas? Is this?
We know this is
Alabama?
pork chop.
This is pork chop.
We know he has had lots of food.
And we
really don't know how old he is, but we do know he's at least 4, right, Bobby?
And he is in Alabama.
Yeah.
We know he's at least 4. I would 100% say this is a mature whitetail.
Yeah.
And a shooter.
But how would you? So he doesn't have much on antlers.
No, it's all about body.
He's got
though.
short legs.
Yeah.
His neck attaches to his neck. Looks like his neck looks like his body.
Yeah.
He's a 55-gallon drum with legs.
Short legs. Yeah. He's got those flat hind quarters.
And I'll say his legs look short, but his legs look short because his body's so big.
Yes.
I mean,
so where would you age him, Dudley?
I would say that he's not a day under 5 years old.
Lanny, what would you say?
Right off, I would say he is at least, at least 6.5.
Okay, that's good. It's just really once they get that 5.5 plus, it's really hard.
And I would think he could be older. I mean, just throwing it out there.
In the South, you can't. I mean, well, they always say cover up their antlers and then try to make a judgment.
And this is a 200-pound deer, and where he is in Alabama, that to get that big, he's got to be old. So, I mean,
you don't see many. I mean, you don't hear a 4-year-old deer looking like that.
No.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to get his tooth and age. So now let's go. So Arthur, let's talk about what y'all found out.
I want to try to explain what we're looking at because a lot of people don't even know what the cementum is. And we talk about cementum, we throw the term around because we are looking at hundreds of these a day. But the cementum is that protein collagenous matrix that every mammal is depositing on the distal root tip. Even you and I, if we still have our natural teeth, we are depositing cementum to keep those teeth locked securely into the gum line as we age. And you've probably heard the term long in the tooth.
Oh, well, we talk about that with Bobby all the time.
Yep, the teeth naturally continue to extrude from that gum line. So as they're moving upwards and outwards, they need something to keep that tooth locked in so it doesn't just fall out. And sometimes it falls out. We've all known people that's happened to. But as long as we're, relatively young and healthy, we're depositing those cementum layers each year to hold that tooth in place. And so those are the layers that we're looking at that are most akin to the rings of a tree, although you can see there are some subtle differences. Trees aren't, for example, being impacted as much by a rutting season or perhaps alfalfa field that's on one year and off another year, some rest rotation grazing system or some other agricultural impacts or the impacts of hunters on a population. Trees, they sort of just grow with the seasons. And of course, they have that period of dormancy in the winter. So they make that dark layer. Animals are active year round, at least these animals. And so there's some nuances that are more like, I consider it a growth layer, an annual layer of growth rather than a distinct ring. And you can probably see that in this picture. There's some pretty distinct lines, and then there's some more subtle indistinct lines in between the more distinct layers.
So what Carolyn was talking about there, she was saying cementum as it's continuously deposited. Cementum is basically here. This is the outermost edge of the cementum, and it goes all the way here to the dentine. And so then we call this the cementum dentine junction. And then this over here is the dentine, which is kind of like the foundation of the tooth itself. So what we're looking at is from basically here on out. This is all cementum. And then these are the thin, dark bands that we believe are deposited during the winter months that Carolyn was referencing. And so I have them labeled here. The reason I had that first picture where it was zoomed out is we like to scroll around the tooth and track and find where the best spot to age is, because as you can see here, I tried to do my best, but these red dots represent what we would consider components or false annuli. And so that's where our models kind of come into play. And this is definitely a source of error. In whitetail, maybe not so much, but some of the other species, you could, especially to the untrained eye or even to the trained eye in difficult populations like down in Texas, we can either undercount or overcount. For instance, as you get further out towards the periphery out here, these false annuli and components, they become much more distinct, and it's much more apparent if you're scrolling up and scrolling down. You can kind of see them fade, and that's when we know to group them as an annulus. So that kind of shows you there the red dots, and this was an 8-year-old deer that you guys submitted.
That's what I thought he was. I said he was going to be 8.
So Arthur, when I look at that, it looks like where the number 7 is and where the number 8 are how come those aren't years?
He just explained
They
that.
are. Yeah, 7 is a year and 8 is a year. It's basically this whole thing here is year 7. So from this line to that line is year 7, and then these red dots represent the components within that year.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, I do understand it. Just when I counted what I thought I was counting rings, I got 10.
Yep. Yeah. And you're most likely counting these two here.
That's right.
So that's where I was saying, if you scroll up and down, it becomes here. I can go back to this picture. It's a little bit more apparent here, but then the earlier years weren't as great. So that's kind of why I chose the spot that I chose. We really like having the slide and looking at it through the microscope, but I couldn't figure out a way to have you guys see through the microscope the same way we do. We can hook it up to the computer, but I thought this would be a little quicker and easier.
No,
an 8-year-old deer. That's an old in my mind.
Deer in the South.
Yeah, it really is. And what are some of the what are the oldest deer you guys are seeing up there?
So the oldest deer we've ever aged is 22, and that's from Louisiana. But
That's
generally,
amazing.
we're
It
going
made
to
it
get
22 years.
Yeah, I have some stats here. So in 2024, we aged 17,000 whitetail. The average age was 4. The oldest deer we aged was 19. That was from Vermont. And then of those, that was sometimes we don't know the sex. And then of those, the oldest male or buck would have been 12 and the oldest female was 18.
Wow.
And then I didn't do Mississippi, but I did do Alabama. So we aged just 43 teeth from Alabama. We don't get any from the state agency there, but the minimum or the average age was 4, or the median age was 4, and then the oldest one from Alabama was 9.
Wow.
Interesting.
That really
That's a lot
is.
more precise than, hey, it looks like he's 2.5.
Yeah, it
You know
really
what I mean?
is. I
And I guess I do want to clarify with that, the accuracy, when you guys say it's exact, it is the most accurate way that you can estimate an age of an animal, but at the end of the day, it's still an estimate. So there's some people out there who will claim, or they think of it as DNA analysis and, it's super accurate, 99.9%. Generally, we like to see greater than 85% accuracy in whitetails. The caveat with that being that when we're wrong, it's usually we're off by a year. And then I think you guys mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, but if you guys could age your deer, 1s and 2s, that would be great. It would be awesome if we got all deer that were older than 2, because that's kind of where cementum age starts to shine, is in the older age class animals. And just like you said, Bobby, was this an 8-year-old deer or an 11-year-old deer? That's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to tell looking at the jawbone. But cementum age is going to shine, and that's where you're going to start distinguishing those older, mature age classes of animals. And then also, just as another caveat to throw out there, just because you send it to us, we might not be able to nail down a single age. You might get an age back that says 5B, 5 to 6. And so it's either 5 or it's 6, and we don't like to have any ancillary information. So, you said you had game camera pictures for at least 4 years. You knew he was 4. If you tell us that, we're probably not going to age it any less than 4. So we don't like to have any of that information, because we want to be unbiased and just look at what the evidence under the microscope is telling us and go from there. So, when we get those ages back, if they do have an age range, what we always tell people, if it's 5B, 5 to 6, and you have reason to believe that he's on the younger end or the older end, then go with whatever your ancillary data tells us. But that we try to leave that up to our clients and our hunters, because we want to remain unbiased and scientific in our age assignments.
Is there, like, I'm looking at the variation in these rings. Is there any nutritional information that you can garner from that? Like if the ring is thicker, or certain characteristics of those rings you were talking about that are around the tooth that indicate a better habitat versus worse habitat?
I mean, we can make.
How much time do we have?
All right.
Well, you know what? Seriously though, I mean, if you went back 4 years, that's when I got.
That's
the
what I was
price.
wondering. I mean, that's when the feeding began.
That's he started. He got the all you can eat.
But the buffet kicked in right around 3 right there.
These actually look fairly uniform. So whatever sort of nutritional deficiency or addition the animal was exposed to looks like it was pretty similar throughout its lifetime.
Gotcha.
We get some deer, particularly whitetail, raised on food plots, for instance. They're growing crazy antlers and they have crazy headgear and they're very non-typical and they've got extra points and stubs everywhere. And when we see those animals, we usually see something really similar in the cementum. Like the growth layers are crazy. The lines are all wavy. They're not regular at all. We get weird spurs and starts and stops. And those are really, really hard to age. This is not the best example, but it's far from the worst as far as regularity and how those growth layers were deposited.
Yeah, as far as a deer from the South, this is probably about as good as it gets. I was a little nervous when you first contacted me and you're like, I got this deer. I really want to know how old he is. And then from Alabama, just generally the southern states are more difficult. But it's not every deer in the South is hard to age, and it's not every deer in the North is easy to age or clear to age. It's just a general trend that deer in the South or from southern populations are more difficult and deer from northern populations are easier.
And do you think that's because of consistency of diet?
We think that's probably more
lack of consistency
Yeah.
in
Lack
our
of
case.
consistency
So
in diet.
yeah, if you look at a mule deer from Montana that's just trying to scrap out a living, those winter annuli are very distinct because they have nothing. They're just trying to
starving to
survive
death,
until they're just trying to survive until spring, and then you get a really abundant growth cycle, and then it just stops again. So generally, when we're talking grazing in Montana, we're usually talking about cattle. But the amount of forage you have on the land, July 1, that's pretty much what you're going to have. You'll have a little bit more after July, particularly if it's under irrigation. You might have a little bit of fall regrowth, but what you have is what you have. And then it just diminishes until the following spring. And then, of course, in Montana, it's covered in snow. And the animals are just trying to survive. And those animals probably have the worst life, but they're the easiest for us to age because those winter annuli are so distinct.
Interesting.
So I'm a big tree nerd, I guess you could say.
Definitely could say that.
But looking at this, it somewhat reminds me of tree rings. You've got the two different seasons. And you also have, like, when it's young, it's not growing just super fast, but then it kind of catches what it needs. And I see, like year 3, 4, and 5 or 2, 3, and 4, it just absolutely takes off. And then once it kind of hits that plateau of, being a full grown adult, it seems like those rings slow down and get a little bit closer together.
Yeah, and that's pretty common among all species. There's not like a set age where that occurs, but black bears, for instance, we're aging a lot of those into their 20s and 30s, and I mean the last 10 or even 15 years could be as much as the first 3 or 4. As far as like distance in cementum, the first it could be
amount of growth.
Yeah, so you could have say this was 4-year-old black bear here, then this amount here could be another 15 years in a black bear, or even in a deer if it lived that old. But a lot of that's just to do with the animal aging of itself. But like Carolyn was saying, you can make some inferences, if there's a thin year and then a big thick year after that, that's one of the ways that is how we do what we call reproductive histories in black bears. That's unique to black bears. We can't do that with any other species, but we can identify the years that the female black bears rear cubs. And so the annuli will be really thin the year she has a cub, and then the year after, when she is still rearing that cub, but is able to, kind of make up for her nutritional deficit that the cub has had on her body, then there'll be a rebounding where the cementum is thicker. So we call it's really simple, thickening and thinning.
Is that just black bears or is that all bears?
That's just black bears. There's been research into trying to do it with brown bears. I suspect I see it in brown bears, but statistically it's not significant enough. Gary did forget who it was with, but he did a pretty in-depth analysis
It was with Alaska Game and Fish
to see if we could do it with brown bears. And I mean, they were identifying them, but they were missing a lot of them. So they dismissed it as something that you could reliably identify cub years in brown bears. So yeah, it's very unique and specific to black bears.
And for the brown bears, some you could and some you couldn't. But in order to have, verifiable statistical significance in this field, you have to be able to do it every time. And we just can't with that species.
Yeah.
And polar bears are similar. I mean, sometimes we're looking at polar bears, you can say this is probably a female, and these are probably the year she had cubs, but we can't do it with enough consistency and reliability to report it.
So I've got a random question. Do you guys ever get asked to age something that, like, maybe a fossil or, not necessarily bone anymore? So I'm assuming you could do something that was dead where the tooth was still present, but something that may be fossilized. Are you able to go back that far?
It depends on how fossilized it is. So by definition, once something's become fossilized, these layers that we're looking at, the soft layers, if you will, have been replaced by rock. I mean, that's how something becomes fossilized. So once we decalcify those, there's nothing left to look at. All the cementum layers are gone. And we have had some success doing sub-fossilized remains, in particular bats in Africa on the island of Madagascar. There was a study that a graduate student was looking at the impacts of bush hunting on the species, because humans have only been on that island for the last 100 years or so. But they found fossilized or subfossilized bat remains from about 200 years ago. And so they compared the ages of those bats before humans were on the island to the ages that the bats are growing to now. And what we found is that the bats aren't living as long now that people are eating them, which one might have guessed. But again, in the world of science, until it's published, it doesn't exist. Right. And so now we know that, and it's because we were able to look at those subfossilized remains, and some were too far gone. Some we couldn't get an accurate age on, but over half we were able to age. So that was actually really cool.
That is
we
interesting.
Had some other old animals, like hundreds of years old, just like maybe bison or horses, just from local digs around Montana, because a lot of people are into paleontology and dinosaur digging here. So we can't do anything with fully fossilized remains, but if they're not completely fossilized, there's often enough. Did we do a dire wolf? Didn't we have a...
I don't
it seems like to be
that.
the word, the species of the week.
Yeah, dire wolf.
Yeah, and I still think too that if we found something that had been frozen that was preserved in the tundra, something like that, there's no reason we couldn't do this process on it. But we've never received any of those samples to test.
What's the wildest sample y'all have had to test? I mean, is it the bat or in Madagascar, or is there something?
Yeah, the bats are weird.
Yeah.
Beluga whales were really cool.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we've done
Goby brown bears. We did those. There was like less than 30 of them at the time, and then they were surprisingly very clear and pretty simple to age. So that was really good because it gave them really good data for that critically endangered population.
Yeah.
How did you guys get interested in teeth? I mean, how did you not become orthodontist or something like that if you were really interested in teeth?
Well, I think both of our backgrounds, mine was certainly in biology. So I worked as a wildlife biologist for the first 15 years of my adult career. So my background is in wildlife management specifically, and AJ comes from a more broad biology background, but both very avid hunters and definitely proponents of wildlife conservation and hunting as a form of conservation. And so this just seems like such an important piece of information to manage those populations and to be able to manage them sustainably, because again, to infer sustainable take, whether it's providing prey for a predator species or for the ultimate predator species, which is humans, you've got to be able to manage those ungulate populations to allow for that. And so we both feel pretty strongly about that.
Hit the horns for them.
Carolyn, wow. Well, those are some good words.
There it is.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really interesting.
Very interesting.
And I mean, these guys are scientists up there.
100%.
And they figured out a niche.
Yeah.
And they're helping the world manage wildlife.
Yeah, and the history started in I guess microscope slides, and then expanded into wildlife management and age and stuff. That's super cool.
I bet they've got a neat So is that a walrus behind y'all?
That is.
It is a walrus, and I'll tell you the story real quick. So my husband and I are both pilots, and we have some we call them 4-wheel drive up airplanes. So we can get in some pretty remote country. And last summer, my husband flew our Cessna 185 up to Alaska and was able to do some beach combing. And this was actually it was dead of natural causes. And in Alaska, only the natives are allowed to harvest walrus. But if you find one that's been dead, washed up on shore, you can get a permit from the state and the federal game agency. Actually, you need permission from both. But you're able to salvage the carcass. And so Matt strapped that on his Cessna and flew back to Montana. And anybody want to guess how old it was?
I'd love a chance to guess at this.
Yeah.
So one tooth's broken off.
Yeah, he's look like a.
And isn't that normal
one.
from don't they favor one side over the other? Isn't that pretty normal?
I think in this case, it was probably lost to a fight. It was probably broken younger in his life, but it might not have been a fight. It could have been, scraping the bottom for mollusks, things like that. They have tests for a reason, and they use them.
Okay, let's get some age here.
I know zero about this animal.
I do too.
So I'm just going to say
I'll
8
give you a
years.
hint.
8 years. Give us
I'll
a
give
hint.
you guys a hint.
Give us a hint.
You ready?
Yeah.
Walrus routinely that we get are aged over 30.
I was going to say 35.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was going to 35.
Well, I'm kind of like at that 25. That
Yeah.
seems like a decent number. Dudley's at 8.
I mean, he's got to be tough old
I
dude.
blew it.
You go 38. There you go.
All right, let's go 40.
Hey. So I'm 35, you're 40, and you're 25.
Yeah.
Well, 35 wins the bet.
Yay!
How about that?
All right.
So
Yeah.
And I swear that was going to be my
animal,
guess even before the 30 question.
but
job.
not the oldest that we've seen.
It's not.
Is that right?
No, 44 I think is the oldest walrus we've had.
Man, I'd be so stoked if I found that thing on the beach or whatever.
That is really cool. Wow. Carolyn, Dudley's a pilot also. So sometimes when we go and work on these properties, Lanny will run a chainsaw and Lanny will cut it and Dudley will pilot.
Cool.
He's got more bad jokes for
Dad
those
joke of the week.
Yeah.
You can't make Art smile. He's so serious.
There you go.
He's a scientist, man.
Well, okay. What are we not asking about Matson Laboratory that we need to ask?
Yeah, can anybody just find you on the internet and send a tooth in?
Oh, absolutely. We're pretty
right.
easy to find. We're pretty easy to find if you're traveling the I-90 corridor.
Yeah.
People stop in all the time and we give them a lab tour. We love sharing what we do.
Do you have any turkeys up there?
We do have turkeys.
All right. Well, we might have to swing by there.
Yeah, for sure.
We haven't reliably aged a turkey yet.
I was thinking you
So-
might could do the spur. I mean, I don't know how, but
You might be able to.
yeah.
So if we sent you
anybody
some,
can do it, it's us.
Yeah, we could send them some spurs.
yeah.
We could give it a shot.
We got a lot of them.
Do we have any turkeys of known age that we could send them? That would be the way to create a model, I would assume.
Validate it.
Yep.
We could.
That's exactly how we do it.
I mean, didn't you shoot a Jake last year?
Oh, Lord.
It has to have some age.
Yeah.
It can't be 0.
Well,
We
guys,
need at least some growth.
Yeah.
we get.
We should send. We've got spurs laying around here. We should send one up there.
Yeah.
Have
It'd
them
be
slice it
interesting
up
to
and
know.
see what's in- I'd love to see the cross section of one.
Wow.
Anyway,
We have done pheasants, right?
Yeah.
We have done pheasants. So I would imagine turkeys probably just more and bigger.
And she mentioned the odorless bone on the fish.
Yeah.
That's really interesting too.
Yeah.
That they can potentially
Yeah.
age a fish.
One time I was fishing in Venice, Louisiana, and a grad student from LSU came and collected all the otoliths, or however you pronounce it, from our fish, and took them back to school to study them.
and in their old tale that the longer the leg is on a turkey, the older he is too. Am I just coming up with that?
Well, here we have two biologists here on the.
that's true.
on
I've
the
never heard
screen.
of that. But
Yeah.
I always heard the correlation to the spur length.
Yeah,
But I don't
definitely
know about
spur.
leg length. I mean, there could be a correlation there as well.
I don't know.
We need to investigate that. We could send a text to Dr. Chamberlain and see if there's something we might could team up and
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Figure out.
That's a great idea.
People would love to know how we get in arguments all the time about how old is this
Imagine
turkey.
that. Yeah,
and
we
the
get arguments about
the
everything.
the spur length correlation has been diminished.
Right.
I know Mike. I'm not sure who Mike or Marcus or whoever did that study, but it was pretty conclusive that we always used to age them
By the length of the spurs.
Yeah, the blunt one was 2, the sharp one was 3, and if it had a little curve to it,
And it
a
was
point,
4.
it was a 4.
Yeah.
But we were proven wrong on that, so need to come up with a new way to do it.
This is good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Y'all just hold on now. Let's have a little fun. Dudley, why don't you rapid fire some questions to him? We have a little thing we like to ask our guests. We should have done, it's my fault. We should have done this at the beginning. Now y'all are smiling. We could have loosened y'all up earlier.
Yeah.
But Dudley is going to ask you some questions, and it's brought to you by our friends at Nutrient Ag.
Yeah, it just helps to get to know you a little better. Yeah.
All right, so it's 2 of you. Do y'all want to just alternate, or do y'all want to each answer it? Why don't each of you answer the question?
All right, Carolyn.
And
you go
Carolyn,
first for
you
each
go
one.
first. Okay.
This will be great practice for trivia tonight.
That's right. That's
perfect. Yeah,
exactly
is it-
right.
We're doing Matson's Lab as a team at trivia in Manhattan
I
tonight.
bet y'all dominate.
Man,
I love a good trivia night.
Let's do it.
Yep, shout out to 406 Brewery.
Yeah, I always go to Dave's Dark Horse for trivia night. So,
Okay.
Uh,
And we're going to charge him for that now.
Okay. So, are you ready?
Ready.
Do you like the mountains more in the winter or the summer?
Summer.
Summer.
What is your favorite outdoor activity?
Something on the water.
Something in the mountains.
There you go. What is the most teeth you've aged in a day?
618.
Golly.
I've probably done 350.
Wow.
That's a bunch.
That's a bunch of teeth.
Oldest tooth?
That we've aged personally?
Yeah. But, well, the beluga whale, I mean, right?
Yeah, so 62. We all looked at that one, so that'd
Yeah.
be 62, I think it was.
62.
Okay,
63.
so what's more
Stacy's not here.
fun?
She's the one that aged it.
What is more fun to age, a deer or a tuna?
I'm going to say a deer.
I'm going to say a deer, too. I don't like tuna that much.
Okay, favorite mammal species to hunt?
Elk.
Elk,
Favorite species to fish?
Walleye.
trout.
Did you have braces growing up?
Yes.
No, but I wish I did because when I'm describing the teeth, I hate using my own teeth as an example. When I'm
right.
showing which tooth to pull, I always have to point at mine, and I don't really want to show
Oh,
anybody.
you have a beautiful set of teeth. Come on now.
You have a really pretty smile.
Yeah.
What is
Oh, that's very kind of you.
this is an important one. What is a fair amount for the tooth fairy to give a really good kid?
I hear it's going up. I hear kids are getting as high as $10, but I think about 2 should be the max.
Man,
I agree.
I like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this adjusted for inflation? I feel like it was like $1 when I was
Yeah,
a kid, but
it
now
should be a
it's
lot
gotta
more
be at
now,
least
then.
20.
Okay, we answered this earlier. Can you tell a difference between a feeder deer and an all-natural deer?
Yes.
Usually.
Last but not least, based on your data, where is the best state to target mature deer?
Ooh, good question.
Oh, I don't have that in front of me. What?
I think Utah. I think Utah does a really good job. Off the top of my head,
Okay.
just thinking of the animals that we've aged.
Okay.
And of course, that's mostly mule deer.
Okay.
But Utah and New Mexico are probably managing for the oldest mule deer.
That's
I know
really good to know.
That's a
That's
good point she mentions because Utah has a mandate to age to a certain or to harvest to a certain median age. So they're trying to manage their populations to be at a certain minimum median age.
okay. Well, that's great to know. Good information. And we know a lot more about you guys now. We appreciate it.
Lanny, we're always in here. We always have these interesting guests, and you're always on your computer. What's up?
I'm looking at Onyx the whole time. I love that, but I love the desktop too.
My favorite thing is Bobby doesn't know how to shut his computer down,
Yeah.
so I can go in there and share his pins to my account.
That's what you were doing in there this morning.
Yep.
Back during deer season, I shot a couple of big bucks.
Of
But,
course.
As I'm looking for them, I
Couple.
can turn on this tracking feature.
Yeah.
And I can see where I've looked.
And I use that feature too for spreading seed, spreading fertilizer, spraying. It really keeps you on track.
Onyx is a great company. Look, we know Jared. They're hunters,
They
just
are.
like we are. So
Yes,
they're
no
serious
doubt
about
about
this.
it.
The way they've designed this thing, a hunter and a gamekeeper can take advantage of it and make their property better.
Use coupon code Mossy Oak to save 20% off of your Onyx subscription.
Yeah, and Mac, you shouldn't do that now. Richie, you got to help me. Okay. Now, you're not going to get off that easy. We do have a trivia question. Lanny, you're going to love this trivia
All
question.
right.
Well thought out, a trivia question specifically for you guys. So we've got Mitchell over here.
Yeah,
This is his first run. So,
But what are we going to give a prize away?
well, because our internet is down, we could not pull a winner today.
Oh yeah.
So we'll double up next time. Somebody will win a fabulous prize.
people
look,
win something.
I
Wait,
got one.
Look,
Mitchell?
Mitchell.
I went outside
okay.
and got one.
Look at
Yep.
look at
Look
this
him.
guy.
How about that?
I mean,
Mitchell?
It was Turkey Peter 9 on YouTube.
Turkey Peter
9.
Turkey Peter.
Turkey 9.
9.
Okay, well, he will have won a nutrient
And a
measuring cup and an assortment of other prizes,
Gamekeeper
yeah.
stuff.
We'll
That's
take
right.
care of you,
Yeah.
Turkey Peter. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, Mitchell, this is your debut into the trivia world.
The trivia question is, how many teeth does a mature deer have?
Ooh, look at him thinking.
This is a great question, Bobby.
18?
Yeah, so we'll go. Here we go. So we got
8,
one shaking his
right?
head. They're whispering. Y'all can talk amongst
Y'all
yourselves.
can talk amongst yourselves. That's cool.
8 incisors plus
Oh,
8 and 24 is 32, right? There's 6 on top, 6 on bottom on each side.
The bell
Yes.
comes out.
yes.
32.
Hey, killed it.
32. And correct me if I'm
These guys
wrong,
know what
but
they're talking about.
that's how many teeth we have, isn't it?
You
That is
don't.
correct.
Everybody else does, but you
Got all
don't.
my teeth.
I always get nervous with Bobby's questions because y'all are biologists, but you look at one tooth all day. You don't look. You don't. So.
They did good. That
But
was
y'all
good.
knew
good.
it. That's
That's true.
awesome.
Good job.
I don't have all the dental formulas memorized, so
That's
you
right.
made us think on that one.
We don't look at the jaws and the skulls every day, but we do look at them pretty frequently.
Well, I tell you what. So, guys, if you're managing your deer herd,
Yeah,
and,
this is a great
and our
resource.
audience, that's what they do.
That's what they do,
At
yeah.
some point, you're going to want to take advantage of their services, and you can go to their website. It's Matson, Matson Laboratory, and they're in Manhattan, Montana.
Montana.
But I will say this: my usage of their services, it was so easy.
You good deal.
It was as easy as it could be. If I had
Thank you for the
known
kind words.
how easy it was, I probably would have tried to send y'all a tooth to see if I could stump you.
We're going to be pulling teeth all
Yeah,
over.
send us all you got, and then I don't know if this is the time to do it or not,
Yeah.
but for all your listeners, if they want to send us a tooth, just use promo code Gamekeeper, and we'll give them 10% off. That way, we kind of
Come on, hit the horns, Mitchell. Look at there.
Saving. If you listen to this, you're saving money all
All
the time.
10%, just
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Off aging your deers.
All right. Carolyn Nistler and Arthur Stevens. But I think, Arthur, do you go by Arthur or Art?
I actually go by AJ, but
Sometimes he goes by Artie.
Artie, AJ.
there's not really any name that offends me. So
That's
Arthur
pretty
is my
good.
given name. Arthur John is what AJ stands for.
All right. Arthur Stevens and Carolyn Nistler. We have, with Matson Laboratory, Manhattan, Montana. We've enjoyed having you guys on here for sure.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Do y'all
Thank you
ever,
so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
when you're up there in Montana, do you ever listen to our podcast or do you ever happen to catch our television show on the Outdoor Channel ever?
Negative on the Outdoor Channel, affirmative on the podcast.
Oh, right.
Okay, yeah.
I was listening.
I don't
up
get the
there.
Outdoor Channel,
Yeah,
so
I don't have Outdoor Channel anymore, so it's just YouTube primarily for me. But I've watched a few of your podcasts on there. I think you sent me one link, and I watched it.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
There you go.
So these young people, what do you do?
We have an app called Mossy Oak Go, so you don't need the Outdoor Channel anymore. Isn't that correct?
Well, I don't know that our show airs on that.
The old ones are on
No
there.
ones do.
Okay. Well, good to know.
But
Y'all learned something
hey, we'll
today.
get the new ones on there as soon as we can.
We will.
All right. Thank y'all so much for being here.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed having
Yeah.
you, and really, really are impressed with what y'all are doing.
It's good stuff.
well, thank you.
Well, thank you. If you ever have any to do it, need age, hit us up.
Yeah,
Help you
great
out.
tool for the gamekeepers out there.
Will do. Enjoy the conversation.
Hey, don't hit end. I think we might have
Yeah.
to stay on for
Okay.
for another like 4 or 5 hours while it's down.
It won't be that long. Hopefully, it
We'll
won't be that
take you
long.
to the brewery with us for trivia.
All right.
Phone a friend.
Well, yeah, good luck. You know,
We
we're
need,
good
we
at
need a
trivia.
trivia night.
You know, from time to time we have our guests ask us a trivia question, and we are 100% on our trivia question.
Well, we hadn't asked anybody to ask us anything in a while.
It has been.
So we've been protecting our record.
Yeah. But so if you need a phone a friend, Dudley is your guy.
Yeah, that's true about trees.
All right.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right, I think we're good.